Hey, Len, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So, for those of you listening, I'm Carmen Omedi with the ARG team, and today I'm excited to introduce Len Cannata, attorney Lenny Cannata, who has extensive experience in the real estate industry for a number of years, and is part of the broader kind of partner ecosystem within the ARG team. And Len, I'll turn it to you just to give a little bit of a introduction about yourself.
Hi, all. So I'm Len Cannata. I'm a licensed Illinois attorney. I've been practicing since about 2014. Closed hundreds of real estate transactions on the sale and the buy side, primarily residential. Excited to get started on this because I do have a lot to share based on my experience.
Well, great. Well, great. Yeah, we're thinking, you know, and for those of you watching too, this will be a series that we have. Basically, it's called Ask an Attorney or Asking a Lawyer. So there'll be a number of these videos, and as Len mentioned, he's a wealth of knowledge. So we'll turn it to him. Len, let's start today with selling. So we're going to start with sellers, and I know you have a number of topics to dive into. So let's kick it off.
Absolutely. So when you're considering selling your house, immediately you're filled with excitement. Either you're looking to purchase a new home, or you might be moving out of state, or some other arrangement. However, when you're selling a home, usually the first thing you do is start searching for a realtor to list your home or comparable homes in your neighborhood and what you think you could get for it. I'm going to say you need to start somewhere else, which is even more important. Because remember, every real estate transaction is completely unique. There is no cookie cutter for each of them. Initially, I want you to look for a local village inspection. Now, this village inspection is completely different from the inspection the buyer is entitled to per the contract. Many municipalities in northeastern Illinois have this local inspection. It could be as complicated as a full inspection of the home conducted by the municipality. It may just be a sub pump inspection, or it might just be a clearance to see if you have any outstanding violations against the property. This is very important to do prior to listing and entering a contract for your home, because inspection is required to either obtain a village compliance or a transfer stamp in order to sell the home. It cannot be done without village approval. Now, let's say you get an inspection back, it's clean, you're good. Most of the times, though, it is not. And if your village requires substantial inspection or substantial repair items on that list, you have to do those to get in compliance. And that also informs you on how to price your house or what type of work you want to do. Let's say it comes back and there's extensive exterior concrete damage. Well, that could be, let's say, $10,000 to $15,000 worth of work. Now, if you're not in a position or you don't want to do those repairs, when you're listing the home and negotiating with potential buyers, you could either say, I will offer a credit, or I will do the repair, but it might have to hold off. You just want to be in the best place. You never want to be rushing when you're under a contract. Also, when you're creating your numbers on how much you think you're going to get, it's good to figure that in, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're setting up to buy a house. You know how much you're going to get for the sale of your existing home, and then all of a sudden the village inspection comes out and you realize you're $10,000 short to buy that new home, because that just starts a domino effect, and then you could end up in bad situations, including a breach of contract. So be smart about that. Order that village inspection initially. Now, another thing you may want to do, let's say you've owned the house for a while and you've done some repairs on the home, possibly unpermitted. Just be mindful of that if there is a village inspection, because they're usually going to catch that site sort of thing. Oh, there's a bathroom in the basement. This was never, when the house was first constructed, or never caught on previous inspections. You may have done unpermitted work. Even if you did get a permit, you may have forgotten to close it out. So let's say you had some villages might require a permit for plumbing. So let's say you had a hot water heater installed. This is just an example, not the end all be all, because like I said before, it's very different across the board. So you installed a hot water heater, you had to pull a permit. Well, what happens if that contractor never pulled the permit? And let's say this work was done 3-4 years ago. You still have an open permit with the village that you have to close out in order to gain compliance with the village. And it may take time to get an inspector out there. And what happens if the inspector comes back and says, well, they didn't install the hot water heater correctly? Now you have to do it again. These are all things that could delay your closing and cost you money, which I always advise. Those are some of the first things you want to do up front. The second thing you have to do, it's important. It happens all the time.
Let me ask a follow-up question on that, because I think you make a good point. I mean, I think oftentimes, in my experience, sellers, to your point, they rush right into, and I shouldn't say rush, but you go right into, hey, let's stage the house, do all that good stuff. And you might not think about those things. And, in the normal course of owning a house, those aren't things that are necessarily top of mind. And to your point, it's like, hey, you're probably going to be okay. Like, it'll all work out. But it does add additional headache. It adds additional stress. It adds time. Right. It can delay things. So let me ask you something. Now, you do, I know you handle, 50, 60 plus, kind of cases a month, and you see a lot of this. And what percentage of those cases do you see some sort of challenge, whether it's big or small, related to what you just spoke about in terms of the municipal ordinances and making sure everything's clear to get your transfer stamp?
So depending on the areas you work, the inspections are very common in West Cook County and South Cook County, and some villages in, I believe, McHenry and Lake. They're more common out there. How many challenges do I see? Lately, more than I like to admit, with regards to village inspections. But traditionally, it's usually about 30% of the transactions have a village inspection, which is substantial, because that gets still, that's still a good chunk. It's nearly a third, let's say.
And now, with this, obviously a seller, whether you're a seller or a buyer, but in this context, a seller, you're working with your realtor, you're working with, an attorney. How much of this is surfaced on the realtor side versus the attorney side? Like, whose responsibility? I mean, it's ultimately the seller's responsibility, but whose responsibility is to, be preemptive with this and give the heads up and help them through? Does it fall with the attorney? Or does it fall with the real estate agent?
Usually it'll fall with the real estate agent, because usually in a real estate transaction, the first person to make contact with the seller, they're not calling for the lawyer. Whenever you're going to sell a house, people seldom call the lawyer first, unless it's a close friend, like, hey, I'm considering selling my house. Usually they contact their agent first. They contact the realtor, which is fine. Many realtors should know that landscape and know to properly advise the sellers. I mean, they only call attorneys when they want us to review a gym contract or something, never the home contracts until it's, well under, everyone signed the dotted line.
Contracts are usually solid.
Yeah, right. You're
not getting out of those. They might be easier.
You can't get out of those. But usually the realtor and the attorney will kind of tag team it, work together, because that's also important for, usually agents put together a net sheet for the sellers, and sometimes they'll miss even the local transfer tax. Let's say, some villages have $10 per $1,000. If you're selling, a $400,000 house, that's $4,000 worth of real estate transfer taxes. Yeah. That's not your property taxes. And if you're running on a real thin margin of trying, get money out of a house to put down on another house, that $4,000 can make or break you. Which why it's important to always, for the seller, do some due diligence, see what your costs are. There could even be judgments, against the property that you might not have known of. Those wonderful envelopes people get in the mail, be like, don't have to worry about this, toss it away. Those could be judgments, whether it's for lapsed water bills, or maybe you had a credit card that you didn't pay off from. Not a credit card, that's a bad example, but I've seen even UCC filings against homes for solar panels or stuff. It attaches to the property, and people are like, wait, what about this? This is, $6,000-$7,000 here. So, I mean, when you're considering selling your home, search your local recorder, your county recorder, like Cook County Recorder, DuPage County Recorder, and you could see a list of all documents recorded against your property, which includes your deeds, your mortgages, assignments, as well as the judgments. Just be mindful of that, because that'll give you, a much better inkling of what's out there. An attorney will always do it for you as soon as you can, and many realtors will do this for you just to see what's out there, because you want to know what's coming down the pipeline. You want to be in the best position possible.
Yeah, and I think that's, the point of this video is it's first and foremost
It's to scare sellers into doing the right thing up front.
It's no, it is to educate, right? It's to educate. Maybe there's a little bit of entertainment here. We'll see, but it is to educate because, as a seller, this is something, when it comes to real estate, it's not like the same as, buying maybe buying a TV or buying a computer where you.
No, this is the biggest sale or purchase you're going to make in your lifetime. It's happy and it's very stressful.
And it's infrequent. You might do it once, maybe twice. So you don't always, when you buy, bigger ticket items, like a car is a good example. By the time you're in your 40s or your 50s, you probably bought a few cars. So you kind of know the process, you know what to ask for, you know how it works. But for your first home or your second home, there might have been 10.
You're like a baby deer in the woods.
Yeah. And so it's important, to educate so that as someone who's a seller or as a buyer, you have this knowledge to say, oh, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Attorney, I thought we had to check on this, right? Or I thought we needed to do this. So you don't even need to have complete knowledge of it. You just have to know to ask the question. And that's really what we're trying to get across there.
Right. And that's the important thing, because so many times too, whether you're an attorney or you're a realtor, sometimes you'll get a referral from a friend and maybe you'll start working in an area you've never worked in before. Like, let's say you focus on, you're always working in the Joliet area, let's just say that. And then all of a sudden you get a file way up by like Round Lake, which is up in Northern Illinois. It's a whole new area you've never really worked in before, either as an attorney or as a realtor. So you want to be able to know what's going on out there. I mean, that's a little advice to realtors as well, and to attorneys. It's okay not to know things. It's not okay to not know things and not search or figure out, and educate yourself on it.
Yeah. And that's, for us at the ARG team, that's what we bring to the table. We obviously have experience in core markets around Cook County and DuPage and, the collars, but it's also, we value the partner ecosystem that we have with people like yourself where, hey, Len, you've done thousands of these contracts. Is there anything unique about this area? Can we preempt or head off, potential, time delay or headache in this area? So I think, that's not to have a shameless plug here, but that's, some of the value that we bring. Well, let's do this. Just probably another couple minutes here. We have time for one more question. I guess in terms of, we talked about the inspection. What about the cost, right? Like, can you give any tips or tricks or maybe insights on the cost?
No one knows the cost. Everyone loses math when it comes to a real estate transaction. Let's say you're selling your home for $100,000. Immediately people think, okay, I'll owe my realtor this much, and then all I have is my mortgage. And then that's, they take all that and they're like, this is how, let's say I owe $90,000 on my mortgage and I owe $2,000 to the realtor. I should walk away with $8,000. That's unfortunately not how it goes. There are many other costs, including county and state transfer stamps, the cost of local transfer stamps, if there are any, the cost of title insurance, the cost of any other ancillary services that title company may need to provide to get the property, the property's title properly cleared. Also, in some situations, you have a survey, which is required in many single family homes. And then further, associations, condo and homeowners associations may have monthly assessments or fees that require you to order documents or special assessments that if you're not going to the meetings, you might have gotten notices from your HOA and tossed them away. Next thing you know, you have a $5,000 balcony special assessment that you didn't know about. I was very particular on that because it happened on a file. Didn't know the special was coming through until we got the homeowners document or the condo association's documents. It's very important to know that stuff. So all those costs add up. There is no, I love it as soon as a contract comes in, hey, could you calculate, what I owe? I'm like, I don't know. First, if you give me your mortgage and how much you owe, I could give you a ballpark number, but there's a lot of stuff out there that you will not know until you're a couple weeks into the process, such as your special assessments. Also your taxes. People forget how taxes are done in Illinois. This year we pay for last year. So you are responsible for the time you are on the property for giving the buyer a prorated tax. And that often gets lost in the mix. Let's put it that way. So there are costs with selling home. It's never, and there's never a person who says, "Oh, this is less than I thought it would be." There's never a person.
Yeah.
But we always try to do as much as we can up front to show them how much the costs are and what things are going to.
Well, and I think on that point, it's important to do one, because you obviously want to know what you're spending money on, how much things cost. You know, there's not, I don't want to say price transparency, but you know, it's not something that, you know, is well known. Does the average person know how much does title insurance cost?
No.
Most don't know. But I think it's important to have that conversation up front, to at least have, you know, as close to accurate as possible, because most people that are selling are taking that money and then putting it into a new property, right? I mean,
Right.
So having, you know, a delta of 10K may be a big issue. Make or break you. And to your point, those fees, 500 here, 750 here,
It adds up.
50 to the, you know, to the tax man or the tax woman, like that adds up. And so it is important to just, I think the takeaway from this, what I'm hearing is that, you know, we'll have another video like this on the buyer side, be more specific to them. But I think the takeaway is, in general, you need to educate yourself as a buyer or as a seller, ask questions and do them early and often. And I think it's also important to, you know, get your attorney in the mix as quickly as possible, because having an attorney who knows what he or she is doing, who has the experience, plus a real estate agent, you know, who's on top of things, who's communicative, like it's just going to make your life easier during what is invariably going to be a stressful time, right? Even if it goes smooth, it's still stressful. So I think that to me is, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think that's kind of the central point you're trying to get across.
No, absolutely. You know, get your attorneys, you know, whenever someone goes to say, I could save the money on the attorney and the realtor, I'm going to sell the house myself. Unless you've done 100 of them, you don't know what you're doing. You have to leave things to the professionals at a certain point. You need your realtor, you need your attorney.
Yeah.
You know.
And, you know, the fees.
And I'm sorry, you need a good attorney and you need a good realtor.
Yes.
Okay, you need people who are willing to help you out. Because you know what? I mean, some of the dumbest people I met in my life, I met in law school. You know, so you need good, you know.
Well, hopefully there's no and by the way, we'll qualify in case there's other attorneys out there watching. That is a personal opinion.
Yes.
I told you there would be some levity in this call. Well, Len, we appreciate the time. We look forward to having you back in a couple of weeks to continue topics, you know, that are relevant and helpful for folks. But until then, thank you again. Hope you have a great night, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care.